Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Effortless English Podcasts. I'm Alex.
And I'm Luna.
Today, we're talking about something every English learner wonders about. How much time should you practice every day to see real progress?
Yeah, is it 10 minutes? An hour? Or should we quit our jobs and study full time?
If quitting your job is an option, maybe. But for most of us, time is limited. So, how do we make the most of it?
That's the key, right? It's not just about practicing, but practicing smart.
Exactly. I've done a lot of research on this. And today, I'll share what studies say about the best way to practice.
Great, because I care more about what actually works. I don't want to study saying, if you practice 10,000 hours, you'll be fluent. We need something realistic.
No worries, I've got realistic numbers and some surprising findings about when and how to practice.
Perfect. But before we start, a quick reminder for our listeners.
Yes, if you want the full transcript of today's episode, check the description below.
We also have subtitles in multiple languages. Just turn on the CC button if you need them.
All right, let's dive in. How much time do you really need to improve your English?
And if you don't have much time, what should you focus on? Let's find out.
All right, let's start with a big question. How much time do you actually need every day to see progress in English?
Yeah, is there a minimum amount that works? Or does more always mean better?
Good question. Research shows that even 15 to 30 minutes a day can lead to improvement. But there's a catch.
Of course, there's always a catch.
The key is consistency. If you only study for 2 hours once a week, it's not as effective as 20 minutes every day.
So it's better to do short daily practice than a big study session once in a while?
Exactly. Studies on language learning show that the brain retains information better with frequent exposure. It's called spaced repetition.
So instead of stuffing my brain once a week, I should give it small snacks every day?
That's a good way to put it. Daily exposure helps your brain absorb and retain new words naturally.
Okay, but what if someone only has 10 minutes a day? Can they still make progress?
Yes, but they need to focus on active practice. Instead of just listening to English, they should try speaking, writing, or repeating sentences.
Got it. So if I only have 10 minutes, I should practice something that forces me to use English, not just hear it.
Exactly. Listening is great, but speaking and writing help you remember more.
Okay, but let's be real. Most people don't only have 10 minutes. They just think they do.
True. We waste so much time on social media, watching random videos, or just scrolling.
Right. If people used half of their scrolling time to practice English, they'd improve a lot.
Exactly. So, the real question isn't how much time do I have? It's how can I use my time better?
That's deep. So, bottom line, if you want the minimum effective dose, aim for 15 to 30 minutes a day.
Yes. And if you have less time, focus on active practice.
Okay, next question. If we do have more time, what's the best way to use it?
Good question. Let's talk about time distribution and efficiency next. All right. So let's say you have more than 30 minutes a day. How should you divide that time?
Yeah, should we focus more on listening, speaking, reading, or writing?
Great question. The answer depends on your goals.
I knew you'd say that. Just give me a simple answer.
Fine. If you're learning English for conversation, focus on listening and speaking. If you need it for work or school, then reading and writing are just as important.
Makes sense. But should we split our time evenly between all four skills?
Not necessarily. Studies show that listening and reading build input, while speaking and writing build output.
Okay, but in normal words?
You need input to learn new words and grammar naturally. Then, you need output to actually use them.
So if I listen a lot, my speaking should improve too.
Yes, but only to a point. If you never practice speaking, you won't get comfortable using new words.
Got it. So, what's a good balance?
A common method is the 70/30ths rule. Spend 70% of your time on input, listening, and reading. Then spend 30% on output, speaking and writing.
Oh, so if I study for an hour, that means 40 minutes of input and 20 minutes of output?
Exactly. But there's another factor, intensity.
Ooh, sounds fancy. What does it mean?
It means how deeply you engage with the language. Passive listening is not as effective as active listening,
So, just having English playing in the background isn't enough?
right? You need to focus, repeat words, and try to understand.
Okay, but let's say someone has 2 hours a day. How should they use that time?
Here's one plan: 40 minutes of listening, 20 minutes of reading, 20 minutes of speaking, and 20 minutes of writing.
That sounds doable. But what if someone only has an hour?
Then do 30 minutes of listening and reading and 30 minutes of speaking and writing.
Makes sense. So, we should always include both input and output?
Yes, because using English actively helps you remember more.
Okay, so now we know how to use our time. But what about personal differences? Does age or experience change how much practice we need?
Good question. Let's talk about personalized learning next. All right, so we know how to divide study time. But what about personal differences? Does learning time change based on experience level or age?
Good question. Like, do beginners need more practice than advanced learners?
Yes, but not in the way you might think. Beginners improve quickly with less practice. Advanced learners need more time for smaller improvements.
Oh, so it's like going to the gym? When you start, you build muscle fast. But later, progress slows down.
Exactly. This is called the law of diminishing returns.
Fancy. But what does that mean for study time?
It means beginners can see progress with 30 minutes a day, but advanced learners may need an hour or more to improve.
Okay, but what about age? Is it harder to learn English when you're older?
Not really. Adults learn differently from kids, but not worse.
Really? I always hear that kids learn languages faster.
They do, but only for pronunciation and accent. Adults are better at grammar, vocabulary, and reading.
So if I start learning at 30 or 40, I can still improve.
Absolutely. The key is practice methods, not age.
That's good to know. What about learning background? If someone speaks two languages, do they learn English faster?
Usually, yes. Multilingual people already know how to learn a language. They're better at recognizing patterns,
So if I already speak Spanish or Chinese, English might be easier?
right? But even if you only speak one language, you can still learn efficiently.
Got it. So learning speed depends on level, age, and experience. But the real question is, how do we stay motivated?
Good question. Let's talk about sticking to a plan next. All right, so we know how much time to spend and how personal factors affect learning. But here's a big problem. How do we stay consistent?
Yeah, a lot of people start strong but give up after a few weeks.
Exactly. This is called the 3-minute passion problem.
Sounds like my failed gym memberships.
Same idea. People get excited, practice a lot for a short time, then stop.
So, how do we avoid that?
First, set realistic goals. If you try to study 2 hours a day but can't keep up, you'll quit.
Right. So, it's better to start small and build up?
Exactly. Start with 15 to 30 minutes daily and slowly increase.
Okay, but even with small goals, motivation can drop. What's the solution?
Use the habit method. Link English practice to something you already do.
Like what?
For example, listen to English while drinking coffee, or practice speaking on your way to work.
Oh, so it becomes part of your daily routine?
Exactly. When it's automatic, you don't need motivation.
That makes sense. But what if someone has no time?
They probably do have time. They just need to use small pockets of free time.
Like waiting for the bus or cooking dinner?
Yes, even 5 to 10 minutes of listening can help.
Okay, but let's say someone still struggles. What's another way to stay consistent?
Find an accountability partner.
Oh, like a study buddy?
Yes, if you practice with a friend, you're more likely to continue.
I love that idea. But how do we know if our practice is actually working?
Good question. Let's talk about measuring progress next. All right, so we've talked about how to stay consistent. But how do we know if we're actually improving?
Yeah, because sometimes it feels like nothing is changing. You study every day, but you don't feel better.
That's normal. Progress in language learning is gradual, so it's hard to notice.
So, how long does it take to see results?
It depends. If you practice 30 minutes a day, you'll see improvement in a few months. If you study more than an hour a day, you'll see changes even faster.
But what if someone feels stuck? Like they're practicing, but they don't feel any better?
That's where progress tracking helps. You need a way to measure improvement.
Like what? A test?
Tests are one way, but they're not the only way. You can also record yourself speaking and compare after a month.
Oh, that sounds cool. So you can actually hear the difference?
Exactly. You can also track progress by reading harder texts or understanding more in conversations.
Makes sense. But some people might think, I've spent so much time, why am I not fluent yet?
That's a common problem. Many learners believe that more time equals fluency.
Wait, it's not? So I can't just study for 1,000 hours and magically be fluent?
No, time helps, but the key is how you use that time.
Oh, so just sitting with a textbook for hours isn't enough?
Right. You need active practice, speaking, writing, and testing yourself.
Got it. So, to know if we're improving, we should track progress, record ourselves, and push ourselves to harder materials?
Exactly. Now, let's look at what science says about learning languages. All right, so now we know how to track progress. But what does science say about learning a language?
Ooh, are we getting nerdy now?
Yes, but I'll keep it simple. Studies show that consistent, focused practice is the key to success.
Okay, but how much practice are we talking about?
There's something called the 10,000 hour rule, the idea that you need 10,000 hours to master a skill.
Wait, 10,000 hours? That's like over a year of nonstop studying.
Yeah, but that rule is not 100% accurate for language learning. Some research suggests that 1,000 to 2,000 hours can get you fluent.
Okay, that sounds more possible. But does that mean I should just study all day?
No, because how you study matters. One key idea is spaced repetition, reviewing things at different times.
Oh, like using flashcards?
Exactly. Apps like Anki or Quizlet use spaced repetition to help you remember words longer.
Nice. What else does science say?
Another important concept is the immersion effect. The more English you surround yourself with, the faster you improve.
So, watching movies, listening to music, and reading books helps?
Yes, but only if you engage with the material. Just watching Netflix with subtitles in your language doesn't count.
Uh, so I need to actually think in English?
Exactly. And one more tip, speak as early as possible.
Even if I make mistakes?
Yes, research shows that active speaking helps your brain build stronger connections.
So, science says use spaced repetition, immerse yourself, and start speaking early?
Exactly. Now, let's talk about special cases like learning English for tests or travel. All right, so we've covered general learning strategies. But what if someone has a specific goal, like passing a test or preparing for travel?
Yeah. Learning English for daily life is different from studying for TOEFL or TOEIC.
Exactly. If your goal is an exam, you need to focus on test-specific skills.
Like what?
For TOEFL or IELTS, you need academic listening and writing. For TOEIC, you need business English and fast reading skills,
Oh, so different tests need different types of practice?
right? You can't just learn English in general. You need targeted practice.
Okay, but what if someone is learning for travel?
Then, instead of grammar and writing, they should focus on speaking and listening. They need common phrases, not perfect sentences.
Like, where is the bathroom? Instead of, may I inquire about the location of the restroom?
Exactly. Simple, clear sentences work best in real situations.
Got it. But what if someone only has a few weeks to prepare?
Then they should do intensive practice. For example, study for 2 to 3 hours a day and focus on the most useful skills.
Oh, like a language boot camp?
Yes, short, focused study sessions can give fast results.
So if I have months, I can go slow. But if I have weeks, I need to go all in?
Exactly. Now, let's wrap things up with some final thoughts. All right, let's wrap this up. We've talked about study time, efficiency, personal factors, motivation, and science.
Yeah, and now my brain is full. But let's make it easy. What are the most important takeaways?
First, consistency matters more than total hours. Even 30 minutes a day is better than cramming once a week.
Got it. What else?
Second, balance is key. Don't just listen or read. Practice speaking and writing too.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Third, use science-backed methods like spaced repetition, immersion, and active speaking.
So basically, be smart about practice and don't just stare at a textbook?
Exactly.
And what if someone feels stuck?
Then they should track progress, adjust their methods, and stay patient.
Okay, so learning English isn't about just working hard. It's about working smart and staying consistent.
Perfect summary.
All right, listeners, that's it for today. If you have thoughts or questions, leave a comment below.
And don't forget, learning English is a journey. Keep going, and you'll get there.